Welcome to the Sounds of Encouragement, the place for creatives to find encouragement and support to help you stay motivated, creative, and inspired to use your craft to more fully impact your community. Thank you for tuning into this episode, and don't forget to subscribe so you get notified of future episodes. If you find value in these podcasts, please share with friends or colleagues. To keep this production ad-free, please share your support at www.buymeacoffee.com/encouragement and share a one-time gift or check out the member levels. I'm your host, Melissa Slocum, and I thrive on encouraging other creatives through teaching music, small business coaching, podcasting, and so much more. Find out more at www.musicgrow.com and subscribe to be part of a growing creative community supporting one another. Don't forget to check out the links in the show notes. And remember, I'm here for you, so you can be there for those who need you the most. Enjoy the show. Peter Ciesla is a self-taught textile artist born in Wroclaw, Poland in 1961. Growing up surrounded by theater, visual art, and music, he developed a love for textiles and fashion. Peter started experimenting with textiles at age 11, designing and creating street fashion, as well as costumes for theater and dance performances. He emigrated to the United States in 1991 and immediately focused on developing a career as an artist designer, opening Creative Apparel Design in Chicago, Illinois. He spent the 1990s focusing on custom couture work, learning the painstaking attention to detail that this work requires. In addition, he developed an art-to-wear clothing and jewelry line during this time as the Millennium approached. The present incarnation of his business, Bazyli Studio, was launched in 2002. Peter based it in Bailey's Harbor, Wisconsin, together with his life partner and artist, Skye. They combined their talents and efforts to create their unique, one-of-a-kind, sculptural, beaded jewelry line. Their work has national recognition and has won numerous awards. Although Peter continued to design art to wear in the 2000s, most of his energy went into handcrafting Bazyli jewelry. In 2012, he went back to his first passion and began designing and creating art clothing on a full-time basis. In 2015, Peter and Skye opened Bazyli Studio Wearable Art Gallery in a building adjacent to their home and studios. Peter's work has always been inspired by the natural world. He has most recently developed an art clothing line integrating his own toxin-free, one-of-a-kind, plant-dyed organic textiles. He works with the natural fibers of linen, cotton, silk, hemp, wool, and organic when possible. He experiments with local Door County plants, nuts, berries, and flowers in his natural dyeing processes. He does botanical printing along with shibori techniques. He uses his masterful skills to manipulate textiles in a variety of ways, including surface design, texturing, application, quilting, and felting techniques. He also creates all his own patterns for his signature coats, jackets, and vests. In developing his own plant-dyed textiles, he has realized his longtime dream of creating clothing with a softer ecological footprint. His deep love, appreciation, and respect for the breathtaking beauty of the Door County Peninsula is reflected in his work. He looks forward to many more years of discovery and experimentation in the field of natural dyeing and in creating objects of beauty. Please welcome my guest, Peter Ciesla. Welcome to Sounds of Encouragement. You just heard a little bit about my guest today. Peter comes to us from Bailey's Harbor, Wisconsin, which I'm well familiar with. And that's actually where I met Peter for the first time last summer. So Peter, welcome to the podcast, Sounds of Encouragement. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for inviting me and letting me speak a little bit about what I'm inspired by.
Yes, I have been looking forward to this conversation for a good long time. I have had the pleasure of being in your gallery in Bailey's Harbor, and you have the most beautiful art, which is all wearable art. And you make the most beautiful clothing and jewelry. And I will link your website in the show notes. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with Peter's work, I encourage you to go check out his website. And then if you are ever up in the Door County, Wisconsin area, I encourage you to stop into his studio. It's just phenomenal. And we've bought a little bit, not a lot. We bought a little bit there last summer. And it's just the most beautiful artwork that you can wear. And it's just so inspiring to be in your studio. So that was where we met. Can you share a little bit about where you grew up and what it was like for you?
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I appreciate it. I am originally from Poland. I was born in Poland and in a city called Wroclaw. I grew up there and I actually started experimenting a little bit as an artist at age 11 and never really stopped. I came to United States in 1991. It took a while, and so a lot of my life experiences are experiences from Poland.
And when you came to the States, where did you end up first?
I first ended up in the Chicago area. My sister lived and still does live in the Chicago area. I lived in few different locations: Buffalo Grove, Lake Forest, Highland Park.
Sure.
Eventually, after I met my wife, we moved a little bit more north, closer to Wisconsin border. And 20 years ago, we moved to Door County.
Yes. As you reflect back on your life, are there people or have there been moments that have been encouraging and pivotal for you in your life where someone encouraged you or something happened that encouraged you and helped you move in a particular direction?
There actually have been many. And of course, what's interesting is that these instances or people and situations, they jump-started something or they made something be important, but the importance of these people and situations, and they kind of change actually with time. Because, for example, I would say that my parents were on the one end, this is like a story older than the world. My parents were very encouraging on some level for me to be an artist.
Right.
But when it came to a moment of making the final decision, what education I'll choose to go towards, that was a categorical no. You can always be an artist, do something. So that's a very old story.
Right.
But the reason why I'm bringing it up as an inspiration is that it challenged me. And I see it right now, at this point in my life, I see it as a positive thing because it challenged me in understanding what it is that I really would like to do and the direction I would like to go to. So in a way, back then, it was maybe not great, and that did hold some resentment for a while. But
understood.
Right now, I see it as something that made me actually stronger.
Sure.
In the decision I made of being an artist and following my heart in my career.
So can I ask?
So that's the one thing.
What did they want you to do? What were they hoping that you would do other than be an artist?
Their parents, they would want me to be a doctor or a lawyer.
Okay, very good. Of course.
It would have been very nice, but that's not where my heart was. And I actually ended up to go to college to become an agricultural engineer. That's
right.
what I settled in. And I know it might sound odd, but I never really seek any career in that direction. But any experience, it's good. And a college experience was definitely good. And again, it got me to a point of understanding that being an artist, a creator, it's really something I would like to do. Even if back then I understood that in a different way than I understand it now, because now I have perspective. I have many years of being an artist.
So as an artist, who was significant in encouraging you to continue to pursue textiles and pursue what you wanted to create?
There are a few people. I would say that one of the most important experiences with people was meeting my wife, life partner, Skye. When I met her, she was an artist. She was a sculptor. She carved stone. And for her, there was just really no question that I should be going towards where my heart was and what I wanted to do. And she was actually very helpful with some logistics about how to go about this.
Wow.
And so there was always a tremendous support of what I wanted to do without really telling me what to do.
Sure.
But just whenever there was a strong thought, there was a pointed direction or some options. So that was very helpful. And also, I think it was really a first time in my life that I met someone who's in any serious way didn't question it. My path that I wanted to choose. There was completely no question about it.
Wow.
It's like, okay, that's what you want to go do. Maybe you should focus this way or this way and figure out what it is that you want to do. Because back then I had several ideas where I wanted to go. Although I must say that working with textiles and designing clothing, that was with me forever, it seems. And I started doing it when I was 11 and playing with it intensively. But so that was Skye. And I think what's important to say, because your podcast, it's about encouragement. And I really would like to encourage anybody at any point in their life to know that, and that's my experience, but it's also many other people's experience. That's why I see it as something very important, to not try to exactly define sometimes what you want to do and how, but just, as they say, go for it. Just do it. Just do it and allow, because we change through life. So what we start doing early on, it will evolve one way or another. And perhaps with having more perspective, meaning having more experience, it becomes clearer and clearer. Because I always say that it was very clear to me what direction I wanted to go to. But after many years after I started, I know that was not that straightforward. And I had to do many things, and I did many things in order to get me to where I am at right now.
I love that encouragement, because it is rarely a straight line between points A and B from where we started to where we're going or where we'll eventually get. I feel the process is like an evolutionary process. We just continue to evolve as creatives, and we don't really know where that's going to take us. It might be a wandering path, but it's very seldom that it's a straightforward path, that what we started with is what we end with. So I love that advice, because I think that's important, especially now for creatives, to be able to consider as an option if they're struggling or if they're not sure where they are in their career at this point. Great advice.
Right. And what I wanted to add to it is that once you focus on, in a very honest way, focus on what you really would want to do at the moment, you basically allow things that might be from outside of you to happen. And one of those things that happened for me, and that relates to your question about people who brought a lot of encouragement into my life and in my career, was this decision. I made a decision that I would like to start a business as an artist designing clothing. And I really wasn't sure what kind it would be and what it would be. I just knew I wanted to design clothing. And about a year into doing it, and between my own projects that I really wanted to do and things that I chose to take on as means of survival, I had to make a living. A person came to my life. I got a call from a mutual friend, and she asked me if I would be willing to meet someone who is looking for a person who would help her with her wardrobe.
Oh.
And I said, sure. And I met a person who became a mentor, a huge force in my life, pushing me to things that I really didn't have any clue about,
Sure.
but also being a platform where I was able to express myself.
Wow.
And that was very amazing experience. And I wish anybody in their life would meet such a strong force, because I don't think I could do what I am doing without knowing this person for many years.
That's phenomenal. And I know in Chicago, I think in a previous conversation that I had with you, you talked about also having some work in the bridal industry as well and doing some work with bridal. And did that influence also some of your design and some of your instincts, or was that more of okay, it was interesting, but definitely don't want to incorporate that at all in my design?
I did work for about a year for a designer in Chicago. Her design studio was in Glenview at that time. Her name was Mira Horoshovsky. I think she's still in the business. She's also from Poland.
Okay.
So we had that in common. And it was a custom couture clothing design shop. So a lot of what I was doing there was not necessarily something I envisioned doing as an artist myself.
Sure.
Although I learned tremendous amount of skill.
Yeah.
I polished my skill because I was never taught formally how to construct clothing or make patterns. I didn't have, and I would always somehow figure it out. But so meeting that person and her allowing me to work in her studio, and it did take some faith on her part because I didn't have a lot of experience. I just showed her a few things that I made, and she said, okay, you'll be fine.
Sure.
And also, she had, I don't know, around 15 people working in her shop at this time. And she introduced me to everybody, and she knew that I needed a lot of polish. So she told everybody, tell him everything he wants to know. So that was very generous.
Yes.
And that's how I was able to actually learn a lot. And this was a step before I met the person I spoke of before.
Got it.
And I don't think I could work with that person.
Sure.
If I would not have had the experience of working for Mira. So it's all like step by step, and everything plays into a whole picture.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's that evolution.
That was a short experience, but I think it was very important.
Now, as you've gone through your career, your life, have you had any experiences where you've had to discern between, okay, is this encouragement for me, or is this someone else's expectation of me? Have you had any of those situations?
Yes. And interestingly enough, I think that, again, the person I just mentioned earlier, who became a mentor, I think eventually, after many years, there was a moment when I realized she has an idea for me. And that maybe also came later for her, and it really didn't align with where I thought I wanted to go into where I wanted to go at the moment. It didn't create anything negative, but yeah, there was a split. And so I can pinpoint a moment in the relationship where, if I can put it this way now, after many years, that was the moment when her job, if I can put it this way, was done. It's like, I know it might not sound great when I put it this way, but I got so much experience through through knowing this person, and I got so much encouragement into going into field, and that really what matters the most from all of it.
That's interesting, because it's almost the mentorship relationship. You could feel that sense of, I no longer maybe need that mentoring role, and the the encouragement has maybe shifted a little bit to expectation. So it's time for me to fly.
And it's not about that I learned everything I wanted to learn or I needed. It's just things change as we live and we do what we do and we experience life. Things change and things shift. Sometimes it feels you need something new, you need something else, but the appreciation stays forever, and the
Yes.
understanding of what's done, it's just all stays with you.
Yeah.
So I'm eternally thankful, and just went on and to new directions.
Yeah, and you developed it sounds quite a reputation in the Chicago area, and have kept a lot of really fabulous clients, it sounds like, in the Chicago area and all around Chicago, Wisconsin. And it sounds like that the connections and the work that you did was not only profitable for you, but also really valued for your clients. And it seems like those relationships have continued to this day. Is that?
Some didn't. Some of my clients have passed since. Moving to Door County, it stopped the ability of working close with people in Chicago area. I did keep couple relationships professionally going.
Sure.
And especially one of them. It's a person I have designed a big part of her wardrobe for 5, 6 years now.
Wow.
And we became, of course, a great friends, and she feels like a family and a best friend. And she's a very creative person who loves clothing. She just adores textiles. Had traveled quite a bit in the past and brought textiles from all over the world. And actually, what's very interesting is that the way we met, she came back from India. She lived in India for some time. And she returned to the States, and she had purchased some beautiful textiles and saris in India, had them shipped. And she was looking for someone to help her to do something with it. And she just went to a fabric store. It was Vogue Fabrics in Evanston. And everybody in the store knew me because I was there all the time, looking for something. And they had my business cards, and Evie asked if they know someone who can help her. And they said, oh, you need to talk to Peter. And she called me. We met. She gave me these amazing hand-woven saris, quite valuable textiles. And I was supposed to do something with this. And I don't know this person. I don't have any experience of working with her. And she's trusting me with something. So I remember at the beginning, I mentioned maybe we would want to start a little slower. And she said, you'll be fine.
Okay.
You'll be fine. Don't worry. So that turned into this wonderful friendship and a great relationship of actually both of us working together and designing and detailing and figuring out what to do with it. And we developed very strong mutual trust.
Wow.
For me as a customer, for her as a customer, to me, and me as a person who was creating something for her. Right. This kind of work, a custom work, requires a lot of trust. And the trust was there unconditional from the very beginning.
And can I ask, because I think what you do as an artist, creating custom clothing, that is a very intimate relationship that you create with your clients. And in a way that is, you need to know something about a person's style and what they want to project. And you need to maybe get to know their personality a little bit. And that's different from a lot of other artists. And I think that's maybe a little more unique for you.
Yes, definitely. When you work with someone, helping them to express themselves. With some people, they clearly understand who they are and what they want to project. Or maybe they don't want to project anything. Maybe it's just for their own enjoyment. Oh, in fashion, that's a lot about the projection.
Yeah.
And then with some, you meet people who are actually quite very grounded in what they really would like to tell. By the way they dressed. So sometimes people need a little bit help. And you see all the time designers telling people what to do.
Yes.
And you have a whole array of shows on TV, what not to wear. And that's nice. And that's definitely showing certain rules in fashion. But I think it's almost impossible to understand person on that level in a short period of time.
Yeah.
and it takes some time to find out. And it's very important. You know, with Evie, at this point of our relationship, I'll look at something, I'll know right away, that's not for Evie. Or if I come up with some ideas, I know exactly what she likes. And it also goes to a point of understanding or trusting myself with thinking what direction she might go that might be new. But that comes from a very close relationship and from understanding. Not that I know everything. Sometimes I'm surprised, but that's all. And it's a collaboration. Working with customer, it's a collaboration. You can work with as an artist with another artist and collaborate. But the moment you do that, you really need to push your ego and what your work is about to the side without letting it go, because you still need to understand what you're about. So that's my experience of working with customers.
Yeah, we could have a whole conversation about that, because I feel a lot of the similar thoughts and feelings when I'm working with my clients in music, because I want them to play what they want to play and enjoy the music they want to enjoy. But at the same time, I also still have to teach certain things. And so we have to come to some agreement about my goals, their goals, and what they need to know versus what they want to know. So I do understand that process. Yeah. So fast forward to 2020 and our global pandemic and lockdowns. You're in Door County, you have your studio, you have your gallery. Tell me what that was like for you. How did you manage during the pandemic, and how did you stay creative and hopeful during that period?
How did I? First of all, I think it's important to say that my experience of going through the pandemic was not as dramatic or negative as it was for so many other people. I feel very fortunate because aside of some early slowdowns, we actually opened the gallery eventually. That was in end of May or June. And the gallery was actually quite busy the whole season. The following year, the second year of the pandemic was actually quite good in the gallery. It was much easier for us to conduct our business because you saw how where we are situated. We are not on a main street. We are never overwhelmed with a large amount of people coming to the gallery at the same time. So that was very easy to manage, having sometimes one or a couple people at the same time. I also didn't have really any negative experiences. You hear so much about those. So I was respectful of how people saw what was happening, and people were very respectful of how I understood and what my needs were. So I feel very fortunate. And of course, so we were busy. But at the same time, the pandemics made me think harder about where I would want to go. Because you have a business, and business, the one funny thing about any business, from what I am learning, is that it wants to be something that it wants to be always. You have an idea, or I don't think I know anybody. And I know a lot of people who have their businesses. They will say, I had an idea, I had a plan, and it all went smoothly. It just doesn't work this way. So this aspect of maneuvering and directing and making decisions easier or harder to be made, it's always there. But because this was such a huge global happening. And you saw the fear we all went through, and it pushed us to a place of, and of course I'm speaking in general terms, as it pushed us to a place of really thinking of what's important to us on a personal level and on a bigger scale. That was important. And because of that, I think I started doing some things that I always wanted to do that I never found time for.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. So how did that change what you decided to do or what you wanted to spend your energy on now?
I always wanted to get away from three-dimensional, which is designing clothing, to two-dimensional. And I always had a lot of ideas and thoughts, but I never found time to do that. And I focused on that. And the 2D work came out with the happened with a quite good and positive response from outside. But that also translated to my 3D clothing because I started creating my own textiles that I used in a clothing design too. And also, I think the kind of a fad that it's happening now of trying to reclaim, reuse, and try to downsize and played into it because I have collected over many years remnants of every textile I worked with, and so it seems endless amounts of it. And I figured out a way to use it in designing my own textiles.
Yeah.
So and a very great thing happened, I think.
Yeah. So for those who are listening or watching, I don't have a picture right now I can pop up of the 2D art that you're talking about. But for those listening or watching, what Peter is talking about and describing is essentially wall art that is framed, but it's still textile based. And you just create the most gorgeous imagery and the most gorgeous collection of fabrics and feels and just so many great elements that go into your 2D work. And it normally is, from what I saw in your gallery, wall hangings, wall art.
Yeah. It's just manipulating and layering and quilting, stitching, utilizing some known techniques. Yeah, I'm very happy with that part.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that a lot of listeners and viewers will appreciate is that, and I talked to you about this at length this summer, about how you hand dye your fabrics for your clothing. So this isn't just Peter going to Joann Fabrics and buying some fabric and stitching something up. This is a long process of how you even develop your own fabrics first, and then do the work of creating the clothing or the textile art. Can you talk a little bit about how that process goes for you, how you create the...
I do use commercially made textiles.
Sure.
And sometimes I'm pretty much working what inspires me. So if I find a fabric that has a certain pattern design, it's all ready to just cut it and create a garment, I work with that too.
Sure.
But I think what you are referring to, I got a little bit involved with natural dyeing and printing with plants on fabrics. Another thing, right now it's something that is quite popular.
Yes.
And I always had interest in it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go there. And so I do purchase textiles that are ready. I don't do any weaving, but I all focus on textiles that are organically produced and fibers that are organically produced. Silk, it's a little harder to find in organic form, but at least textiles that have as little of the toxicity of chemicals as possible. It's a very hard thing to really know. You need to study a lot about sourcing.
Yes.
But anyways, you can try to do the best you can. So that's what I'm trying to do. And then I am dyeing the fabrics with plants. Some I grow on my own. Some are foraged in the area I live. I use plant materials to dye, achieve color. Sometimes I purchased ready dyes of plants I can't grow on my own or find in my area. Sometimes I just forage, or sometimes I grow things in my garden. So there is a very specific process. I actually never had an idea that it's so complex. I thought, natural dyeing. You can just go for it and do it, which you can. You will always get some kind of a result. But a lot of plants don't give stable color. A lot of plants don't really have pigments that are permanent in the field of natural dyeing. They're called just stains, dyed fabrics. So it became complicated as I was creating textiles that were put in the form of clothing. And it's very important that the visual would last for a long time, not dissipate within a month or two or wash away. Yeah, I learned a lot about the techniques, and it's all out there. I joined a group of people who actually professionally study the processes and the history of natural dyeing, which is just fascinating.
Yeah.
Also in the process, I learned that it's not necessarily that environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
That was a big lesson. Unless you want to stay with some not very exciting basics,
Sure.
it's you basically have to go into chemicals
Right.
and
Right.
tremendous amount of water used. And I think it's a great thing to learn. And it's also extremely time consuming.
Yeah.
I dyed a piece of fabric, I dyed it in a red color. The plant I used was madder. It's a root of a plant. And it has a lot of history. There's a lot of history behind it. But there's this turkey red color. It's called that way. It's this intense, wonderful, deep turkey red color. But the process took, if I remember correctly, 24 or 26 days.
Wow.
From the moment of start to the point of when it was 100% permanent and wouldn't fade. So it was not, of course, 24 days of constant working on it, but you had to keep up with the procedures. And so I don't think we will go back in our mainstream world into using natural dyes. It's just, I don't think it's scalable to a business side. I can play with it as an artist and have something unique. That's just my opinion. Maybe probably a lot of people won't agree with me, but I think it might be much more possible to develop synthetic dyes that are environmentally friendly. And there are some already out there, maybe not perfect, but good, better than they used to be, going to natural.
Yeah, and I think that's always the struggle is as different technologies evolve and develop, those of us who are concerned about sustainability with our earth and possible contamination, pollution, plus just scaling a business, there's a lot to weigh. And I think you're smart to say this is a wonderful thing to do and experiment with, but it's probably never going to be like mass market achievable. Yeah. So I could
be wrong, but
well, we can all be wrong. I agree. But okay. Can we talk a little bit about just general encouragement? A lot of people who listen to the podcast or who watch the show have themselves been through very difficult times, either as a result of the pandemic with their businesses or as creative people. Others have thrived, but are now seeing that, maybe people aren't as interested anymore in what I do because it was a fun thing when everything was shut down, but now they're not interested anymore in my art or in my craft. What encouragement do you have for other creatives?
It might sound a little cliche, but you decide what your passion is. And you have a choice to go that direction or not. With that choice there is a responsibility that comes with every choice. So I think it's really good to remember when we choose a path, when anybody chooses a path, and I'm speaking to myself too, because I go through it all the time. It sounds like I'm an accomplished artist, which I am, and I have done a lot of great things, but I have plenty of days where I don't know what to do, and I think like everything is falling apart.
Yeah.
So I think it just happens to everybody. It's just how we manage that.
Yeah.
So when you look at the very end of it, speaking just how I think, I made a decision at some point in my life to follow the path I'm following. So my responsibility, it's to deal with whatever comes with it. And I know this might sound a little cliche, and there could be a lot of but things coming at me from a lot of people. Life brings all sorts of things at any moments for anybody. You don't have to be an artist. By the way, in order to be good in anything you do, you have to be an artist. You could be a good doctor. Or you could be kind of media conductor, the one that approaches his work as an art will be the good one. And that applies to every profession. I have always seen it this way. Because I never had any training as in a business field. And I thought it might be a beneficial thing for me. So I took an entrepreneurial workshop. And the first thing that they were communicating to us is that doesn't matter if you're an artist or whoever else, or you just want to make cookies. If you are not creative, you most likely won't be successful. So I don't know, I took it maybe somewhere else, I'm sorry, but it's important to understand that you need to take responsibility for the decision you make and figure out a way to go through the hard times.
Yeah.
And that's as good as I can put it right now. And sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it might be impossible.
Yeah.
And then we need to do changes, or we just have to, or I don't know. Things happen.
Yeah, I think part of that responsibility, I love that you're using the word responsibility, because I think it's easy for people to just go into a craft and say, I'll just see if anything happens with it. And if it doesn't, I'll do something else. And so I think that sort of limits a person, and maybe they're not as committed. And so maybe they're not as creative. And so they don't feel that responsibility. Whereas those of us who I think feel that sense of commitment and feel that sense of, this is what I was meant to do, I think that word responsibility is wonderful, because it's not just about we keep going and we keep trying. It's about understanding that we've made a commitment to ourselves, and we're being responsible to ourselves. We're being responsible to our craft. Right. We're being responsible to those around us that are encouraging us, and we're being responsible to our industry. And people don't talk about that. So I really appreciate that you shared that perspective, because I don't know that's a very common perspective for some people. So I appreciate that.
Another thing I would like to add to it is that it has to be without it, meaning it doesn't matter what the outcome is, because there is a chance that you might become extremely successful as an artist.
Yeah.
There is a chance you might not.
Yeah.
That goes to a question, why are you doing what you are doing?
Yeah. And to the definition of success.
Amazing. Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. And there is I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I listened to one of the TED Talks at some point, and it really struck a chord in me. And it was by Simon Sinek.
Yes.
And it was about, right. And it was about, I think the title was Start With Why.
Yes, yes.
And he was not talking about being an artist. He was really talking to people in a business field and saying, start with why, to understand why you are doing what you are doing. And you really can't fake it. You just have to come to a core of why doing what you are doing.
Yep.
And of course, when you start a business, there is the financial part of it. You hope to be successful financially. But I don't know. I think you really need to understand why you are doing, why you are picking the field or a subject that you want to work with in the field. So that as an artist, if you need to create a living out of it, I think it's very important to understand why you are doing it. And I think it helps in a moment when things get a little bit hard, and maybe you get to a point in your life, then you think, I might not really make it as a known person. Or not a lot of us do get there. It's like, why am I doing this? And that helps going through hard times. It actually really does.
I agree 1,000%. And what's so fascinating is that on my stand, I have Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game, sitting right here. I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan. And there's actually a book club that I'm just starting with Simon Sinek's team. And I'm putting together some folks who are going to do a book club on The Infinite Game this winter. Yeah, I agree with that, because as an artist, as a creative, if you don't have some kind of target or a series of targets in mind, you're just shooting arrows off wildly, not really having any particular target. Right. And when you do that, it's almost impossible to succeed or to have forward momentum toward any particular target or goal. And so I love that advice of starting with why. It's a great book. So for those of you who are listening or watching, if you haven't read Simon Sinek's Start With Why, fabulous book. If you haven't read Infinite Game, fabulous book as well. So thank you for bringing that into the conversation. Oh, what an amazing conversation. And we're not done. Come back for part 2. I have to tell you, part 2 is jam-packed with even more great discussion. And we haven't even gotten to the top 5 songs of encouragement yet. So come back for part 2, We're going to hear more about Peter and the artwork that inspires him and other artists that inspire him. And then we get to talk into his top 5 songs of encouragement. I promise you, you want to come back and listen to part 2. It's incredible. It's just incredible. We talk about art. We talk about what art is, where it comes from. It's an amazing conversation. I could talk to Peter for hours. I hope you've enjoyed listening to part 1. And I know that you're going to love part 2 just as much as part 1. So bye for now and tune in. Click over to part 2. We'll see you over there. Thank you for listening. Please click on the show notes to learn more about my guest and to listen to their top songs of encouragement. If you have found value in these podcasts, please share the podcast with those you know. Leave a positive review or support the show at buymeacoffee.com. Sounds of Encouragement is a podcast production of Music Grow LLC, part of growing musicians and teachers everywhere. Sounds of Encouragement is hosted, produced, and edited by Melissa Slocum. To get in touch, contact soundoфencouragement@gmail.com. You can also find Sounds of Encouragement on Clubhouse. Drop in weekly for a dose of personal encouragement. Theme music by Melissa Slocum and Steve Tressler. Music mixed and mastered by Steve Tressler. Thank you to Steve Tressler and Christina Lopriori, who encouraged me to do this in the first place. And remember, I'm here for you, so you can be there for those who need you the most.